Good evening, White Sox fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Hot Takes and Heaters. It is Wednesday, April 16th, and we missed a week last week, but we are back this week to talk the most recent events in the White Sox world. My name is Danny Miller. Sitting directly across from me with all the hair sticking out of his head, as he mentioned pre-show. Just figured I'd throw you under the bus and point that out
Of
because
course, go ahead.
I'm looking like I got the Dutch boy haircut going on over here anyway. So, uh, that he is Jacob Thome, my esteemed partner. How you doing tonight, Jacob?
We're hanging in there. We're hanging
And
in
by the
there.
way, that's Thome. I had to throw that one out there with the
That's all right.
the hair sticking out. So,
All good. I get it. No, we're hanging in there. We're doing all right. Watching horrible White Sox baseball and enjoying it.
yeah, shocker. After the first week of baseball, when we thought things felt a little different, and I'm not going to say they still don't feel a little bit different. It is a little bit a different feel for this White Sox team, but we knew that the White Sox are still going to be bad. And the pitching staff that came out and gave us, you know, like four or five really solid starts, back to back to back to open up the season, some of the best in baseball history for starting staff. We knew that that wasn't going to be sustainable. So here we are. Welcome back to reality. The White
Yeah.
Sox still suck, but there is a new feeling. There are some things changing and some things happening within the organization. There's been some call ups, and I know you and I have been talking a little bit. We're kind of excited to get into some of the most recent call ups. So let's start with the news that we got today about a certain young man who's going to be in Chicago possibly tonight, maybe even at the rate tonight, uh, and might be seen in an official White Sox uniform.
Yeah.
Talk about
Edgar
Edgar
Carroll.
Carroll a little bit and how your feelings are on this about him getting called up.
Yeah, not surprised. Obviously with the way he was hitting, had a really good start to the year. I believe his OPS is close to 900. So, um, not surprised. It'll be interesting to see what they do roster construction wise. Obviously, Um, Sox current catcher rotation is Omar Narvaez and Matt Thies, who's had a good year. And honestly, in limited action, so has Omar Narvaez. So it'll be interesting to kind of see what they do there. I would have to assume it's Narvaez who gets sent down, but um, we'll kind of see. But um, well overdue. I think they have a couple of guys who are well overdue for their call ups. But good to see Cuero get the call now.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of White Sox fans, no news here, but I think a lot of White Sox fans are expecting Edgar Carroll to be a platoon mate behind the dish with Kyle Teal here coming up, probably in the not so distant future. If Kyle Teal comes out and does what we think can do and what he's capable of in his time in the minors, we probably will see him at some point this season. I'm not in I'm not in the camp of rushing things, especially for a bad baseball team. And maybe the White Sox are still working through some of that negative energy that they're trying to put behind them from the last couple of seasons. I mean, at this point, it's no secret that there were things going on in the clubhouse that may have kind of set some folks back because of the mental state that they were in. And I don't necessarily see any reason to rush Kyle Teal up, but I hope that this youth movement that's coming through now, when you've got Lenine Sosa, who started out the season kind of showing out a little bit, and you got guys like Brooks Baldwin now, who tonight has the Sox sole run, and is he's showing what he can do. I mean, he's not the type of guy that you think is going to be a huge, difference changer or difference maker. But between him and now you got Caro up, and you know some of the DFAs that have come along because of that. I just hope that energy that we were kind of feeling at the beginning of the season, even though this is a bad team, there's that vibe that we've been talking about. kind of hope that this youth movement kind of puts some of that bad energy in the past and continues to bring a new kind of feel for this team.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about my drought there. He's been kind of a really fun guy. Definitely a hitter we haven't seen in a while for the Sox. Just a guy who takes a ton. He's a really interesting hitter, um, and I think he's going to have surprising pop. Obviously, he hasn't shown it yet, um, but he was hitting some home runs in Charlotte, which is always a good sign. That's not necessarily a hitter's park, or the left field kind of is, but in terms of that,
There are
we'll kind of
certain types of hitters that'll hit it out
yeah.
by hitting pop ups, but there are others that might not. But yeah, Charlotte's
Um,
one of those places where if you just get it up,
right.
it's like
So
hitting
we'll
golf balls
see.
with an aluminum bat. Hey, how are you doing, Uncle Ted? Good to see you in the chat tonight. So sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. Continue your thought, please.
No, you're all good. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what um, you know, the calls look like. I think Elko, who has 2 home runs tonight, I think he did something else. I think he's got 3 hits on the night. Um, we'll see when he gets a call up. I would assume it's coming soon. We'll talk about Andrew Vaughn in a little bit because I know I put out a tweet that was kind of interesting. So we'll see, but definitely kind of an interesting start to the season for the White Sox, and we'll see what they can put together with it.
Yeah, I agree. Um, as we kind of talk about some of these changes and the youth movement coming up, uh, in the same, I don't want to say the same breath, but in the same kind of timeline of today, earlier in the day, we also had news of one of the elder statesmen on the White Sox the last couple of seasons, and a guy who just seems to find second and third lives here on the South Side, with rumors of having friends in high places in the organization. Mr. Mike Clevenger getting the old heave ho, getting a DFA to this afternoon. So, what are
How
your
many
thoughts on
stints has
that?
he had on the White Sox? He's had so many stints on the White Sox. It's
I mean, I
horrible.
want to say this is at least his third. I mean, the last 3 seasons, he's been part of this team, and I know that even going before that. I mean, we want to go to like back to the Rick Hahn days, where I think they were trying to kind of go after him. You know, they had kind of a thing for him long before he ever became a guy that was wearing the pinstripes on the South Side. So yeah, way too many chances for this guy. Last season,
Lose
obviously
him.
hurt, didn't pitch. What's that? Are you there?
Oh, we lost me.
Oh, yeah, you froze for a second, but
It's weird because on my end you froze and I was still here. So
well, I don't know who lost who on the stream here, but I was just talking about
anyway,
how, yeah, I mean, I don't think you missed much. The uh, the talk of Clevenger and just the amount of chances he's had. Let's just say that's been too many. Missing time last year. Only pitching a handful of innings before going down with being injured. The year before that, he kind of showed some maybe promise, or he ate some innings and did some things, but wasn't really a standout. Just somebody you could kind of depend on. But I know there's a lot of folks out there in the world who are just not fond of him as a human being, with some of the black marks and the black eyes that he has on him. Or man, maybe that's a bad choice of words, because there's a chance that maybe he's left some bruises, whether mental or physical, in his past. But I don't want to comment too much on that stuff. I'm just more thinking about, again, some of that bad energy kind of going away, and the White Sox turning a new leaf. And goodness gracious, wouldn't it be nice just to see, even if this team is bad, wouldn't it be nice to see a dugout and a clubhouse full of guys that are having fun and feeling good about doing the things they're supposed to do on the field?
or a bunch of people that you could root for and not feel like, oh my gosh. I've booed Mike Clevenger, by the way. I went to 2 games, pitched. I think the first one definitely booed him. Did just a horrible human being. Um, yeah, that's all I have to say for it. Glad he's unemployed. Normally, I kind of feel bad, like right, when guys. By the way, the White Sox game is no longer tied. Um, that rolled a long way. Anyway, um, where was I at? Oh, talking about guys who. Okay, so when guys like Andrew Vaughn, like it's hard for me to like hate on Andrew Vaughn because like dude's genuinely a good dude. Like goes to children's hospitals and things. Like I want to root for that guy to succeed. Mike Clevenger, on the other hand, if got hit, nope, not going to go there. If he was unemployed and not doing well, I wouldn't feel all that bad.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Again, I feel like maybe this organization kind of failed Andrew Vaughn from the beginning. He only had a very small cup of coffee in the minor leagues before spending some time right down the road here in Schaumburg during the COVID shortened season and on the taxi squad. And everybody talked about how he was hitting really well there against what was supposed to be major league ready pitching in the White Sox farm system, and a handful of guys that had had some major league experience, and then they just rushed him up to play him out of position for not 1 but 2 years, right?
Yeah,
He threw him out there in the outfield. He was kind of just trying to figure some things out, and we all did. I'm guilty of it, but he got bashed for looking like he had cement boots out there in right field. He just didn't run down the ball very well, and he finally gets his opportunity to play first base, and he's just out of sorts, right? So I don't know. And again, all the whole time, you're on this team in the early 2020s that sure was going on some decent runs and making playoffs 2 years in a row, and then just getting absolutely, slobber knockered when you do make it into those playoffs. And he just hasn't found his stroke. He can't, he struggles with the bat. No matter
yeah,
how much coaching he gets, no matter what it is he says he's working on, the one thing he is he's not as soft as some of these other guys that are on the team that are just like, oh, I can't run out of a grounder. I'm gonna miss a game because of a hangnail, or my hamstrings are always hurting and sore. He actually plays a lot of games, but he's just not performing. And I would love for one of these first round picks that we had, the early first round picks during that era, to have succeeded, yet none of them did. So this is not a shot against Andrew Vaughn. I think it's just a shot at the situation in general. But what are you going to hurt by bringing Elko up? I think this is Andrew Vaughn's last
right.
chance. And I think we just need to I would say they're probably going to give him a little bit more time, but the leash is going to get shorter and shorter as time goes on. And Elko is just hitting bombs. Like you said, 2 tonight. So
Yeah,
yeah, I can't wait to see what happens there. And I see a lot of comments popping up here in the chat. I'm not missing you guys, I promise. So I'm gonna go back to a couple of them. I saw Baseball Toss. Thanks for checking in. He actually was asking if we had any thoughts on Caro and how about Elko. I don't know if he was a little bit behind, but we actually started the show with a bunch of that stuff, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit more as the night goes on. Uncle
by the way,
Ted,
real quick, I want to shout out. Go to FutureSox YouTube because they did a fantastic interview with Edgar Cuero. I think it was
absolutely,
Monday. Yeah, so check that out.
yeah,
Back on that.
literally days before his call up. So awesome stuff there, and very good plug by the way, Jacob.
Thank you.
Uncle Ted
Gotta
with
make you
the
proud.
it would. He's got quite the comparison, and I don't know if I'm ready to go this far yet, but he says Caro is Adley Rushman 2.0. Was that
That's a steep comparison.
does that make your nethers tingle a little bit?
Nothing tingles anymore. It's been too cold.
Wow, we need to get you a date or something, dude. I don't know.
I like to mention that I said that with my girlfriend literally maybe 10 steps from me. So that was
Oh,
not a that was more of a joke than a
so
real.
that's a great way to find yourself sleeping on the couch too, by the way. But I'm
Nah,
sure she's
we're good.
yeah. Me and my wife joke like that too. She knows what to expect from me. So
But no, I think listen, Aldi Watchman was built different. He got what? Whenever you get intentionally walked with the bases loaded, you're a different type
because
of
they're
player.
afraid of you
Yes,
going yard.
right. You're a different type of player. I mean, I don't know if he's going to be. I don't know if he's the all-around player that Rushman is. I think, ironically, I think Teal and Cuero combined would kind of equal, um, what Rushman does just in terms of the defense. Um, I think Teal's hitting ability, and then you could pair that with Cuero, who's more of a power guy. Not sure if he's going to, become as good of a hitter all around as Teal is, but more of a power guy in Cuero. So, listen, it's a much needed switch hitting bat. Ironically, it's going to replace one of the catchers who've actually been hitting pretty well. I would assume it's Narvaez who set back down, but we'll see.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna kind of put you out on a ledge here because I want you to get out your crystal ball.
Great.
I've had this thought about when we do get to the point of Teal and Carroll being up with the MLB organization. And let's just say they're both pretty much in a neighborhood of what we think they're going to be. When that time comes, do the White Sox carry three catchers so they can get both of those bats in the lineup almost every day? Do you DH one
Um,
while the other one's getting a day off from behind the dish? And then have a third catcher somewhere on the bench in case somebody gets hurt and you can put them in the game without losing the DH spot in the lineup? What do you think?
I'm not sure.
That might be one of my hotter takes right now.
I mean, and the thing is, like Corey Lee was hitting well before the injury, right? So like he's not going to be what he's been so far this year. Like that's just not what Corey Lee's going to be. But he can if he can be like a you know slightly below average hitter with his defense, I think you're very comfortable with him playing first base on some days while either Elko or Cuero get a day off. Um, and also using him as kind of the bench catcher. I don't think it's impossible that they carry Corey Lee, Kyle Teal, and Edgar Cuero. I don't think that's an impossible situation for those three.
See, I'm wondering if it's, and I'm not talking about this season. I wonder if, like, next season when that might become a reality, is Corey Lee even still around? Do they keep a Tice or somebody else around? I don't really know. They did load up on catchers this offseason.
Yes, it
I
is.
believe, and we've talked about this in the past. I don't want to run over it too much, but I do believe that that was a tactic to set up the trade deadline. I think a little bit for other teams. Everybody in the league is going to need catchers at some point. It is just
Yeah.
a sought out. It's a sought out position, and I think it would be a missed opportunity if you were to hold on to all these guys come that trade deadline. But only the future will tell. But I mean, it's just I think I see a very good point in what you're saying is you might be able to play him at first every now and again to get that bat. But like you say, if we can get a little bit of power out of him, maybe in the next year over this season and maybe next year, because I don't really think the White Sox are looking to put finishing pieces on this thing next year. You know what I mean? I don't expect this to be a super active offseason, right?
Right.
So, I'm just thinking for the time being of maybe finding another power bat to get in the lineup if you can get him with the pop, and then you still got Kyle Teal who's gonna hit better, kind of offensively, and Carroll's gonna be your defense and power guy. I just find it hard to think that maybe you don't have both of them in the lineup more often than not when you're trying to piece together a team that at least is improving year over year.
Right. And to bring up Jamie Wallace's, point, obviously Elko has outfield experience, but the issue is you could play one of them at first right now. You don't have a first baseman straight up. That's, an easy place to put him.
Yeah, he's like
The
I
issue
know
is
he's listed at like 5'10" or whatever, 5'9".
right.
He's more like 5'7". It looks like
If you
he
play
might be
Cuero,
5'8" with his cleats on.
right. If you play Cuero and Elko and you need to replace somebody, you don't want to lose the DH spot. You want to have a backup catcher just in case things go south. So if you're playing those guys every day consistently, it'll out of Or do they do, listen, the A's are in town. It's a good point to bring up. Do they pull a Tyler Soderstrom and just permanently move one of them to first base? I would assume that would be um, Cuero, as I think Teal is the best or the better. Um, sorry, Michael A. Taylor just tripled. I would assume he has, or Teal's the better catcher defensively behind the plate. So, we'll see. But, I just don't think Teal is going to be good enough defensively at third to have, I think third you need some defense there. Um, so I don't love that idea, but I mean I know Elko or sorry not Elko, but I know that Teal has at least been floated for the outfield because he had some time there,
Right.
at least at Virginia, I believe.
Right. And I think he's probably slightly more athletic. Just it build alone, he's gonna be better suited. Although I don't really know. I mean, Elko's not like he's terrible in the build, but he's a big dude. Uh, just doesn't leave me feeling like he's the
Elko
guy who's
gives
the
you
most.
big Gavin Cheats guy.
Yeah, need
Defense,
that's. I didn't
yeah,
want to put it out there like that, but that's exactly how I feel. Just like Clod Horse,
yeah,
just out there, just plodding around, doing whatever. He's like a Clydesdale. I did not really fleet of foot. Just doesn't leave me feeling great. We've seen enough of that over the last few seasons. I'm tired of watching guys that don't belong in the outfield play the outfield. Just plain and simple.
right.
Leave it at that. And then I see that who was it here? Let me go back up in the comments. Come on now. My mouse is acting. Come on. There we go. I'm gonna pull this back. Where did it go? I don't know where it went, but so I think it was base. Was that baseball tossed? Was saying about something about third base. We need more power at third base, or maybe it was Uncle Ted or somebody. Uh, I I'm under the opinion that Brian Ramos can still be that guy. Uh,
Yeah,
so let's get into that a little bit. Miguel Vargas. I hate to beat this horse. I hate to do it. I will give him credit. He has played a solid defensive third baseman. He looks like a third baseman on the field. He went into the offseason, put on a bunch of weight, says he's feeling better than he did after the trade deadline, where he screwed up his swing mechanics because he was feeling downtrodden and lost weight and all these things about coming over from the Dodgers to the White Sox midseason last year, right? It just sounded like he had a bunch of excuses. Maybe I'm wrong. We've made excuses for him. I'm not trying to beat up on the guy because we did it too. Like it's got to be tough coming over from what is considered one of the best organizations in baseball to possibly the worst, or at least currently one of the worst. Um, all of that is tough to deal with, right? So he goes into the off season. He gets himself feeling good, puts on a bunch of weight, gets back in shape, changes his hand swing, tells everybody that he's keeping his bat through the zone longer, and still can't hit the ball.
yeah.
You have any thoughts on that?
I mean, listen. Um, Venable said he has trust in him. Obviously, he's leading off every single day. Um, so we'll
As we
kind of
bring up Vargas.
see. Um, I just don't know if looking at the underlying stuff. I mean, some of the stuff has improved. He's getting to fastballs better. But he's still not putting it in play. The Savant page is gross. He's hitting
Sorry,
it hard. I mean, he's
I
got
thought you were
a
telling
good
jokes.
average. But it's just not going anywhere.
No,
He's striking out at a very high rate, striking out almost 30%. Um,
but his chase
I
rate is actually down, which is crazy.
yeah, chase rate's good. K rate's awful. He
Right.
only chases at 21% of the time, which is in the 83rd percentile, and then K is
Which
at
means he's fanning on a lot of balls in the zone.
yeah. So yeah, I mean he's just a guy that does he need more time in AAA? Like what? I just don't know. And listen, my hope is that Ramos puts it on here quickly in Charlotte, and he's up here quickly. Um, hopefully he can stay healthy. And, issues with that, but um, yeah, I just it's disappointing to see the return. Now that being said, um, the other two players, which I will not touch on because they are very much prospects, and that's for a different show that runs either Monday or Sunday. But um, yeah, so I mean, those two look good, so the trade isn't necessarily lost. But it's definitely been a disappointing return for a guy who is definitely the headliner of that trade so far.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I want to give a quick shout out to Vince for throwing it out there. Thanks for checking in, Vince. I have to agree. If putting out weight mean anything, he says his wife would be Aaron Judge. But the comment goes that Vargas just has to get better. And I mean, I really hate to think that the headliner. I wanted to be wrong so bad. I hope I'm still wrong. It is early in the season. Maybe we're not giving him enough time to get comfortable with this new swing mechanics that he's been kind of boasting about, and which has had him hitting the ball harder. Still not as hard as when he was in the minor leagues with the Dodgers organization, but we'd like to see those exit velocities get a little bit better. We'd like to see some balls start leaving the yard on a more regular basis. But I mean, yeah, he's got to get better. Defensively, he has gotten better. He looks like a ball player at
Very
third
good.
base. So
Very good.
I mean, I can't complain about that. And maybe if he's able to do that, maybe he can find the bat too. But I just don't know how much time you got to give him. Like I said, Brian Ramos, I don't really care what he's doing down in the minor leagues right now, because the second half of the season last year, he found something here at the major league level. Yeah, sure, he started out slow, but towards the end of the season, he really seemed to be swinging it well, doing it and doing it and doing it well. Sorry, uh, it's just I think that, in my opinion, and maybe I'm just biased because I've kind of been on him since he was, coming up through the system, and he was being talked about as one of the White Sox better hitting prospects. I want to see more of him. He
Yeah.
at least showed us something in a White Sox uniform last year. Vargas is not. And, as much as you want the headliner of a deal that you thought should have gotten you something, right? As much as you want that to show some success within the organization, I am over it. Like, I don't have a problem cutting ties with guys like that. I'm not going to fall in love with these trade pieces. I can't, it's time to move on. Like, as Sox fans, we've been watching bad baseball for so long that you can't. I'm just done. I'm done watching bad
Yeah.
baseball. I have no patience anymore. And call me a bad fan. I don't care. A lot of guys are out there like, let's stay positive. I am staying positive. I'm staying positive by saying, let's get the positives up and moving. Let's get them up and going. But I digress.
By the way,
So,
Vargas is already 25, has 0 options.
correct.
So,
Correct. And
yikes.
yeah. Yeah. Been up and down a couple of times. He's been in the Dodgers organization for a while before he came here. He's had
By the way,
options.
just want to bring this up. Since we're talking third baseman, good past couple of games for Close Montgomery. What do you think the Sox need to see out of Montgomery? Like, somebody pointed out, like, that he needs a good week and they'll call him up. Like,
You think it's that quick? I don't know if it's going to be that quick, but they
yeah, I think it's
might.
2 weeks. I mean, like,
It might.
they,
I mean, confidence is a crazy thing, right? What you think?
it
2 weeks?
I seriously think 2 weeks.
What makes you think that?
If he strings together 2 weeks, because they're desperate at this point.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go
I
with
mean, like,
that.
I think if they want that pick to look good, I think obviously he's Shirley's second first round pick, highly touted guy, and like just quickly fell apart. So the only issue with him is like, where do you play him in terms of like he's got to go at third, and I know he's got some time at Charlotte at third. Um, so we'll kind of see what they do there, but like you can't play him at short. There's no way. You've got too many players already there at short between Baldwin and hell, they're playing Sosa at first. I mean, it's kind of crazy. Agree with you, Wolf Larson. 100% agree. Or I think Joel Perez has got some hope there too.
Bonhomer, huh? Okay. All right. I mean, I don't know if I would call
White
that a
Sox have a
hot
lot of
take. It maybe
middle
a
and
lukewarm take. I don't know. I think there's a chance. Caleb Caleb Oliver's got some. I mean, he's got some talent. So I don't know if that's a hot take that he's going to be the shortstop of the future. It's very possible. I don't want to give up on some of the young guys that they have in the system now, or even up with the team now. But let's face it, if they want to be any kind of contenders in the Central, everybody's got to take a step forward. And
Right.
I mean, it's just it's really difficult to even see at the moment how this team is going to improve over the next 2 to 3 years. It just is like, hey, we've been watching so much bad. Okay, even when you pay attention to the minor league players, like the FutureSox team does here, it's like you got to be able to put it all together, man. And I'm
Yeah.
so jaded, so jaded.
Honestly, I think next year, I mean, if you were to, completely talk about next year, I think you can get me excited because you'd have Teal and Quero would be up. You'd have, I think, all three of the big three would be up between Schultz, Smith, and Taylor. You can argue right now that Braid Montgomery's got at least a chance if he keeps hitting the way he does. He could rise extremely fast. He was a very good college player. Um,
I think
obviously
he's here by the
he
break this year, at minimum.
really.
Honestly,
You think Braid Montgomery's up that quickly?
well, 'cause if any of the news and I have seen it in the chat tonight, I am not ignoring it. I was just kind of pushing it off to a later conversation, but these guys keep bringing up the Lewis Robert, rumors.
Yeah,
We will get to that in a little bit, guys. So hang tight. But yeah, I mean, if Luis Robert goes, I think there's a shot that Braden Montgomery could find his way into part of the outfield rotation this season.
that'd be crazy.
It would be
I think
crazy.
he's up next year. I don't know if they rush him that fast, but we'll see. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me. It depends on how he's hitting. Um, he's a guy who can play either center, probably better in right. Um, but no, I mean, you'd have a middle infield of what you pretty much have now. I don't know if you're going to add anybody to it. Obviously, you're going to add Colson to it, but I think he more sticks at the exterior. First base, I don't have any hope in Elko, so first base would still be a uh, black hole. But then you'd have Teal and Quero behind the plate. You'd have the big three. The pitching rotation would be better, which would force the bullpen to be better because you'd move a lot of these arms. Um, Outfield would still be atrocious, but we'll see.
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
You can start me getting me. You can start getting me behind next year.
All right, all right. I can see that. I can see that. I just again, it's just difficult to even prognosticate at the moment. Uh, you know, we have the draft coming up here, not too far away. We've got um oh, what am I just lost my train of thought. We've got the trade deadline coming up, so
Yep.
there's going to be some acquisitions there. There'll be some additions. Hopefully, Getz doesn't look like he's completely outmatched like he has in some cases. Other cases, I feel like he's done really well. Um, but it's kind of it's so hard for me to imagine the White Sox team being that much improved over next year. But again, I guess you're right. When you look at what's coming up through just the pitching staff alone,
Yeah.
there could be some pretty amazing times ahead of us. So
Yeah. Also, it'll be interesting to see. Hey, there are definitely an increased majority stake that has been a huge talk this year about Ishbia and them. Um, you know, taking more of a stake. They might throw around some more money. Obviously, we'll see. Jerry's still the owner, but we'll see.
yeah, well, I mean that's so the thing about that is when I look at the numbers that came out recently on Twitter, uh we know that there's a trust for Jerry's sons, right?
Yeah.
And that trust, they own, I believe, 30% in that trust. Jerry is said to be it now the tweet said 20, but I'm pretty sure that it's closer to like 18 or 19. That's kind of come out in the last couple of years, but still, that puts them in the neighborhood of about 50% between the Reinsdorf family, which, you know, the Justin Ishbia might look like he has controlling interest because he has sole interest of more ownership than anybody than any one single person. But when you put all the Reinsdorfs together, they still far outweigh what Justin has by like a whole 20%. So I just it's a matter of it's a matter of when I think Jerry kicks. I don't think he sells
Yeah.
as long as he's alive. And if we have another Virginia McCaskey on our hands, we're going to be waiting for a long time before controlling interest gets
Listen,
switched over to Ishbia.
hate to break it, just or not Justin. Where's Justin coming from? Jerry Reinsdorf looks very good for his age. Just putting that out there. Jr. looks pretty darn good for his age.
Yeah, and he sounds the same as he has, at least the last 8 or 9 years or so. His voice hasn't changed much. He still sounds like he's maybe had one or two too many fingers of scotch, every
Yeah.
time he talks. But man, I gotta. And again, when I say this about Virginia McCaskey, I have no ill will towards anyone. I know she was the matriarch of the most storied NFL team, coming down, being the daughter of Papa Bear Hallis, but you know, uh, her leadership in hiring of her sons and nephews and whatnot was not always the wisest of decisions. And Jerry Reinsdorf has been said to be one who knows how to run a business, but unfortunately leaves his fans hanging. I do not want to see that happen again.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it go on as long as it did with Virginia. And like I said, I have no ill will towards the McCaskey family, but for crying out loud, man, our ownership around here never seems to go away.
Yeah.
So,
It's tough. But yeah.
okay, number two. There's a three. I don't even know, dude. It's the most cigarettes I've had all day. Heaters upon heaters during the stream here. So let's move on to a different, more lighthearted conversation. And everybody in the chat seems to have been waiting for it. What have you heard about some Luis Robert Jr. rumors lately?
I've heard Dodgers for Outman and a top level prospect, which seems like a lot. Um, for Luis Robert at this point. I'd be
You think so?
surprised if they. I mean, like a top tier prospect to me is either Zaire Hope or Josue de la Paula, which is horrible Spanish. I have a Spanish story that eventually I'll tell one day on this podcast. Won't be today,
Okay.
but yeah, I just don't know what his value is right now. Like he's a guy who hasn't gotten going, and I get it. He always starts cold, but like he's gonna need to heat something up because I get it. The walk rate's up. The underlying stats are okay, but like this is a guy who looks nowhere near where he was in 23, and for all we know, he's healthy. So um,
Bingo.
I
There's
agree.
where your value is. I think that's where your value is. I think that's where the White Sox are going to start getting at least more interest than they had in the offseason now, as we've seen a healthy Luis in spring training. Now we've seen a healthy Luis the first few weeks of the MLB season, the regular season. And the biggest thing I think we're seeing from him is he's hustling out grounders, where he actually beat one out the other day in the infield.
Yeah,
Uh, he's running to first base even on plays that he might not beat out. He's not taking plays off in the outfield. He's taking extra bases. He's got a couple of bags swiped. And the big thing that I'm seeing from him, even though it hasn't really translated to a whole bunch of extra power and a whole bunch of extra base hits, is he's actually chasing a lot less. He's swinging on more pitches in the zone. He's kind of
Yeah,
leaving that slider that's 3.5 feet off the plate. He's letting it die off the plate. So I don't know if it eventually starts to translate here in Chicago, but I think it's enough for teams to start looking at him and think maybe they have the right people in place to get his back going again.
right.
I mean, it's been said over and over again by people within the organization that are now gone, and people that have knowledge of the organization that just say the White Sox. Now, granted, Lance Lynn's one of them, and he's just a bitter SOB who, was atrocious his last season and a half with the team. You know,
And almost like the entire front office has changed since he's left. Just
right.
saying.
I mean, it's a completely different organization. But I mean, he's going, live on, what was it? Was it Foul Territory he was on when he said that? He was somewhere on a show where he was saying that, like, they were just so far behind, not just major league teams, but he was like, there are minor league teams out there that had better, setup and
Which
coaching
I
and
think is
organization.
now very much untrue.
Probably. It may have been true at the time. We don't really know. We've heard some
I
bad
agree
things,
with him.
but
I think sure you can rip on Rick Hahn for being behind. That's fine. No longer a part of the White Sox. But like, I think the White Sox are one of there are teams without like a track it machine, which is something that Ryan Fuller's big on. You know, there's stuff like that where like they've invested money into the analytics department. That stuff's out there. They've done a lot. Bannister obviously never worked with Lance Lynn, who obviously Bannister knows what he's doing. Look at the pitching staff. Not right now, currently, but look at the you know it's coming. Um, yeah, I don't know. I get it. Listen, Lance Lynn, guy I always liked, but kind of a weird
yeah,
take to kind of shit on a bunch of people who are no longer here or no longer in
right.
baseball either. None of them are still in baseball.
No, you're absolutely right. And, that's kind of my point, though, was like maybe, because that was the majority of Luis Roberts' tenure with the Sox until, just recently, that there are teams that are looking at his health and his chase rate and the things that he's improved upon this season and thinking they might have, the finishing piece to bring whatever it is that needs to be brought out of Luis Robert. But I have to agree with you too. Like Outman seems like Outman and a prospect. Outman might be tough by himself. You know what I mean?
Honestly,
Like
I think Outman is Vargas 2.0.
right.
Had a
But
good rookie year.
they might not see that either. The Dodgers again, and it was brought up in the chat. You just don't deal with the Dodgers or the Yankees, and a lot of times the Rays because they're really good at.
Unless you're trading Jordan Alvarez. Trading for Jordan Alvarez.
Oh, but yeah, I don't know. The uh, the DePaula, is that his DePaula Jose
It's something.
DePaulo or DePaulo or what? Yeah, Jose Josia. What? I don't even know. I can't pronounce it either.
Josue de la Paula? I don't know.
And I got reamed a couple weeks ago for getting Anthony Hoopy Tuionatoa's name wrong. Oh, look, still got it. I had to practice that one for a while, and I apologize, but I got reamed by I think might have been a family member. Um, I had to put out an apology on that, so I will do the same thing for that young Dodger prospect. The crazy thing about his name being brought up is that they weren't even willing to talk about him in the offseason. What makes you think now that with just some health and chase rates being better, that all of a sudden his name's back on the table?
Right.
They were not willing to even put him in conversations, for what I understood. So
By the way,
I don't
we're
know.
all hoping that Luis Robert does something here and shuts everybody up. But um, I
I
know
don't
you
even want
can't
to talk
watch it.
about
He's
Lazaro
up with the
Montez.
bases loaded.
Sorry, Uncle Ted.
Um,
Like, not going to do it. Not even going to have that conversation.
um, but no, I mean it'll be interesting to see. I mean, obviously they should trade him. I don't know what you're going to get for him, but I don't think the Sox are looking for James Outman. And I get it that the Dodgers are probably trying to unload James, but like to me, Outman's more not a negative asset, but a non-serious asset. He's a nothing burger. Um, so we'll see. But at this point, what is Luis Robert? I mean, He's
He's been a
struggled this year at
nothing
the
burger
plate.
besides what, one season?
Yeah, right. He's been another guy who can't stay healthy. And listen, that 1 year, well, the one season, he finished second in MVP voting. So I get it why there's hope as he grounds out with bases loaded. Then we ran 3-1. By the way, if anybody's watching the game live, I'm severely behind. Anyway, um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I
So
mean
newsflash,
it's
my antenna is not working right now, so I am also not watching the game. I'm over here watching the Bulls get their brains beat in what was thought to have been an opportunity for them to take this play-in game and move forward. Or is this the last game of the season? No, this was the
that's
play-in
the
game, right?
playing game. Yeah, playing
Yeah.
game.
So season's over. Who would have thought? Is
Wow,
this
one of
now like
Jerry Reiser's teams disappointed in the playoffs. What a shocker!
yeah, one and done? One and done. Being favored, they were giving up a point, I believe, uh, and got
By the way,
smoked.
how
So
many times have the Bulls and the Heat played in the playoffs? Play in?
a lot.
It's I swear every year it is the Bulls, the Heat, the Hawks, and I think that's it. But those three teams are consistently in the play in. And I think the Hawks played yesterday. Insane. Anyway, back to baseball.
Yeah.
Just a random rant I wanted to get off my chest.
No, and Uncle Ted asks, like, he's like, you don't like Lazaro Montez. It's not that. It's that I don't want to put like, I don't even want to talk about it because I have a tendency that when I bring something up, it doesn't come to fruition, and that is one of the few guys that I would like to see. So I'm just gonna leave it alone. It's kind of just a. I hate to call myself superstitious, but sometimes I do get a little superstitious, and I'm just not gonna bring up his name just yet. But yeah, we'll leave it at that before I say too much, and it does become one of those things.
By the way,
So
I'm notorious for jinxing things on broadcast. It's
yeah,
become my thing. I think I've broken up 5 no-hitters. I've made like 92% free throw shooters miss. It's great. I love it.
and so yeah, I do too. I want to put this question up from the chat. I want to see because I haven't heard. Have you heard this?
No, I
What did
haven't.
what did Ozzy say about Pedro on the score? I'm guessing this is recently because Ozzy's had things to say about Pedro in the past. But so I'm hoping.
To
I'm
answer Jamie
hoping.
Wallace in the chat, Lurie Garcia, but better. That's what Brooks Baldwin is. Well, that's what the hope is anyway.
Yeah, I mean he's a utility guy that can play pretty much anywhere. I don't know if he can catch per se. I think he's done it once or twice, but Leary's even pitched a couple of times. But yeah, I think Baldwin in the grand scheme of things in the long run is a guy who could have a pretty successful MLB career as
Yep.
you know a a jack of many trades off the bench type player. Obviously, he's getting a lot of starts and playing time right now, but that's just because of the way the roster is constructed. But when on a team that's built to be a contender, I doubt he sees as much playing time as he is right now. Obviously, it's just the White
Right.
Sox, but
No, he's a guy that, if there's a contending team, he's probably playing every other day or his defense replacement type of guy.
oh, so I guess it sounds like Ozzy. Vince says Ozzy wanted the job when Pedro was hired, which I don't think that was that big of a secret. Ozzy says a lot of things. There were times when he said he didn't want the job. Then there were times when he's like, "Yeah, I'll take the team." They wouldn't play like that if they were playing under me, pretty much. And I'm
Yeah.
being very liberal with the paraphrasing, but Ozzy's had. He's not one to pull punches, at least not all the time. Sometimes he'll try to be nice, but man, watching him and Chuck and Frank in the post game show last season, he had some pretty choice words at times, and I can't say that I disagreed with him very often. Chuck is a Chuck. He's our fan, and he's our Chuck, and he's a fan first. So he's very how should we say? He's very picky with his words, but he kind of gives you the idea that when he doesn't agree with something, he's going to let you know because he is a fan first. So I'm trying to say Pedro was tricking everybody. Look at this. We want to work on it. We do this. We do that. Oh, so Ozzy was basically saying that he he lied to everybody.
I mean, that's
He
not
really had
shocking.
no clue. Not a shock. Not a
It's
shock at
really
all.
weird though because um, I worked with Cody Decker, who is now with FS1, I believe. Anyway, I board up for one of his shows. Bet for the Cycle was on BetQL Network. Fantastic show, by the way. Cody Decker's fantastic moving, and he was really high on the Pedro hire, like extremely high. Like this is a guy that like everybody should like. I wish I would. I probably. I don't know if I looked up his reaction to Will Venable's hire because I'm pretty sure him and Will cross paths as well. Um, but Cody was very high on Pedro, and I it was really weird because obviously he was not a great manager, and I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, Uncle Ted says baseball is about making the manager obsolete. You know, bat so good it's hard to lose. Manage a bullpen and win 1-1 games. I mean, that's easy to say, you know. But I am kind of one of those who will say that the manager is probably good for 5 wins, 5 losses, and the other 152 is pretty much up to the play on the field. I'll agree with that. But in the case of guys like Pedro who came in here and said all the right things but did little to nothing to actually prove any of that, Tony La Russa, who, yes, Hall of Fame manager in his time, but after being out of the game, out of the dugout for 10 years, looked like the game had left him behind. And even Renteria, who he got a lot out of his players every day, but he made a lot of really doofus in-game decisions. When you have management like that, I will say that you can account for more losses than wins on the
Yeah,
managerial side. They're just there were times when these managers looked unprepared. They made some really head scratching moves, and I think Will Venable. We'll see how it goes. It's way too early in the season to kind of put a grade on what he's doing because again, he's saying all the right things too, but he does have this team feeling differently. I don't think it's just the players on the field. These guys are. What's the matter?
Andrew
I
Rounders
said,
got called strike one on him by missed
oh,
by half a foot.
I just saw a look on your face that stopped me dead in my tracks. Uh,
No, sorry.
I do. I just want to say that Venable, even though it's too early to put a grade on what he's doing, and I really haven't seen enough to say, yeah, he's making all the right moves, or maybe he's making some boneheaded moves. Uh, it just feels like because of that feel and the way the vibe is just, again, it could be just the younger players, but there's a vibe about this team that
Right.
seems like they just care to be there more. They want to play baseball. They're not just going through the motions. So I don't know. We'll see how that works out. We'll see what kind of grade we can put on. How many wins or losses he helped cause one way or the other at the end of the season. But I don't know. It just leaves
I
me
mean,
feeling a little bit better than anything we've had in a dugout in the last since the teens
yeah. I mean,
at
I will
least.
tell you this. I mean, just from the outside looking in, the clubhouse, it was very clear that Pedro had lost the locker room. Like that was insanely obvious, and that doesn't look. I mean, the players look happier. Like obviously that's not what matters, but like clearly they like being there, and there's players who have bought into the system, and you're getting. Listen, I'm not going to fault him for listen. He's got to throw out Leisure every couple of days. He's got to throw out Isert every couple of days. Like that's not his fault that he has a horrible bullpen. He had to throw out Clevenger every couple of days and like finally DFA'd him.
Until
Um,
today.
right. Like that's not his
Oh,
fault.
yeah.
Like it at a point like this is still a roster lacking insane amounts of talent. Um, listen, you're rolling out like Michael A. Taylor every day. You're rolling out no shots against Michael A. Taylor who triple today, but um, it's just hard for me to to judge Will Venable through like 30 games with an awful roster. Whereas Pedro, it was very clear that like he wasn't helping at all. He'd lost the locker room. No, there was no signs of improvement. There was nothing. And at least from what I've seen early from Will Venable, it looks a lot better.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, like I said, towards the end of the season, we can kind of go over that. Maybe, we'll do a show in like October or something where we kind of grade everything that's gone on this season from spring training on. We'll do a Chris Getz grade. We'll do a pitching staff grade. We'll do an offensive grade, and of course we will do a Will Venable grade. But I mean, if it continues to go like this, it feels like we finally got somebody in the dugout who is gonna be the captain, the manager. He's gonna
Yeah.
be the guy at the helm. Where the last couple of guys have felt like they had zero control. There was clicks that we heard about. There was, no respect for the manager. There was all these all these things that came out of his mouth that were certainly words. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But meant absolutely nothing, and we saw the result of that. So, I'm just hoping that again, this all goes. We should have just called this the vibe show. It all goes towards the new vibe of what's going on.
Yeah.
Even though this team is bad, it just feels different. So, I don't know. We're getting close to the hour mark here. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up tonight?
Just to answer some questions in the chat.
Sure.
Tossed. Uh, AHT is in Charlotte. He just is on the restricted list right now for reasons that are not known, which don't need to be known. Just putting it out there. But he's on the restricted list in Charlotte. Any arms in the pen to help out Leisure or to help out the pen? What happened to Leisure? Leisure can't stop throwing pitches over the middle of the plate. He either hits the middle of the plate or he misses by a foot. That's his issue. But no, I think Ian's probably a better person to answer this stuff. But Wilson, I think, will help. Obviously, he was horrible last year, but before that, he was a good reliever. And then you look at their Addison Coffey is a guy to watch. He's a younger arm. Iro Iriarte, I think, is going to be completely stretched out to a starter. He was in the pen last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they moved a guy like Burke or something like that back into the bullpen. Unfortunately, when all the Tommy John stuff happened, it was like the arms in Charlotte. So Tommy John kind of wiped out a lot of the what would have been call ups here quickly. Kai Bush is a name that probably would have been a call up early. So there are some guys in the system. It's just there's not a ton, and it hasn't looked great to start the year so far. Addison Coffey has been good though. Steven Wilson has pitched well, so we'll
Sorry, I
see.
had to mute myself for a minute there, yelling at my dog. I literally was shoving some pizza down my face before we got on stream here, and she
So
just
was
ate.
I.
She literally just ate the crusts right off the table in front of me. I probably would have given to her anyway, but just like she's 14 and just doesn't seem to care anymore. She's like, I'm old, so I guess I get away with anything I want. And she just looks at me like, what, dude? So
What are you gonna do about it?
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, she's just staring at me now. Like I had to throw something at her. She looked at me like, what'd you do that for? I love her though. She's a good girl. She got a lot going on. But yeah, man, I don't have anything else. Is there any more questions from the chat? You guys got anything you want to talk
Nope, I
about?
mean, there is.
The only thing I want to add to the pen is, we all know there's a plethora of arms. I think the biggest thing right now is that because of the delay in the start to, and I shouldn't say delay, it's scheduled that way, but because the minor league system's a little bit behind the start of the major league system, I think, some of these guys will get a little bit of time to, get back into the groove of game speed down in the minors, and we might see a lot of shuffling here over the next few weeks. I don't think that there's any reason to not kind of move some of the guys around that already have their clocks started. And I don't think there's a reason to keep some of these guys who are right on the verge of making the majors, getting up and going because bullpen pitchers are just different. You're not going to put a lot of miles on them. You're not necessarily going to do things to them that are going to put them in bad situations. Other than bringing them up and trying to throw them in a high leverage situation right out of the gate. But
Right.
I think there is the chance that we're going to see a lot of shuffling in the bullpen, and it probably will start fairly early in the season if we don't see any improvement anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, you're already starting to see it. I think Leisure's out. Um, who got injured? I can't even think about it right now. Tyler Gilbert's been a plus addition though. He looked good today. Um, yeah, I mean they're going to get everybody out. Frazier Allard is the name I was thinking of who got hurt.
Yeah, well,
There's
saying
a
that's I'm a
By the
huge fan.
way, we predicted the Sox All Stars before the year, and I would like to say that I'm not quite sure that Ped Murphy's going to be the White Sox All Star this year.
It's
Don't know if
early.
the 10 plus ERA is going to quite get there.
It's early. It's early. It's early. I'd like to see the Chad Bradford delivery in the in the in the in the what do they call that? The Summer Classic. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. So, anywho, all right, guys. First off, I just want to say thank you to all of you in the chat tonight. You guys are always our most valued asset on this team and on this stream. We appreciate you. Uh, as for any other shout outs, again, I would like to make my apologies to those who I have gotten names wrong. Sorry, it's not intentional. I mean, no ill will or I have no bad intent whatsoever. I'm just not great with names all the time. And that's about it. Anything you want to throw out before we wrap it up, Jacob?
Not really.
All right, cool. Well, in that case, this has been Future Sox Hot Takes and Heaters. I'm going to read right off my stuff here to make sure we go nice and smooth out tonight. What do you think?
Wow.
Okay. This has been Hot Takes and Heaters. You can find us Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. or, I don't know, 8:15 like I was running a little bit late tonight. You can find us on YouTube and the Purple app, as Ian says, because we don't want to screw up our YouTube algorithms. I'm mentioning that other app. But if you know the one, you can find us there. For all of our written content and Patreon exclusives, you can find that at FutureSox.net. Check out our prospect and MLB highlights right here on YouTube. Or you can also find that on our X Twitter at FutureSox. Like, subscribe, smash that bell notification so you can get all of that stuff. And as always, go White Sox.